Could Alexander the Great have conquered Rome? Yes, and fairly easily at that. But there's a little more to think about with this question. Alexander's army in 330 BCE was the most powerful army on the planet. It could have crushed any other army of equal size in a battle. Under the command of Alexander and his superb lieutenants, it was undefeated in the field and marched all the way to India from Greece. After what Alexander did in our timeline, to think it would have been a challenge if he had instead went the other way and attacked Italy would be stupid. He would have stomped every army that came his way, besieged and burned Rome, and conquered the whole region. Even Roman legions at their height would have had trouble facing phalanxes on equal ground. The Macedonian phalanx utilized long and heavy sarissa spears that severely outranged the short Roman swords and gave them more breakthrough power in a frontal attack. This sort of phalanx did face Romans in our timeline, just in a slightly different context. In 280 BCE, Pyrrhus of Epirus, a successor state to Alexander's empire, leading phalanxes very similar to Alexander's, invaded Italy and attacked Rome. Things did not go well for the Romans. They could not properly resist the weight of the Macedonian phalanx in a frontal attack. Roman armies in 280 BCE and afterwards were also very different from Roman armies in 330 BCE. At that time, Rome was still using Greek-style hoplites and phalanxes themselves. However, the Macedonian phalanx, with its longer spears, was an improvement on this prior Greek model adopted by the Romans. In battles between these Greek-style phalanxes, which the Greek city-states continued to use, and the Macedonians generally triumphed, which led to them conquering all of Greece before proceeding to attack Persia. Alexander's army was also a more complete battle system than the successor state armies that the Romans faced. Alexander's army had the crucial cavalry component that provided both protection for the phalanx's flanks and a powerfully precise tool for swift breakthroughs of the enemy line. With this additional mobility was created the hammer and anvil doctrine. The phalanx would pin, the cavalry would swing around and crush the formation. Rome, historically weak against cavalry, was lucky it never had to face a complete Macedonian army on the battlefield. Things would be pretty straightforward for Alexander in a bout against Rome. In 330 BCE, Rome was not strong enough to pose a challenge on the battlefield or fight a prolonged war against Macedonia. The victory would be fairly clean and simple. Except not really. Alexander actually would have had a much harder time conquering and holding Italy than he did Persia in our timeline. Italy was a fundamentally different beast from Persia, and the key reason for that was the hilly, mountainous central region of the peninsula. There resided fearsome hill peoples, most notably the Samnites. These were the peoples who defeated Rome in battles and fought in more unconventional ways. They lived in small settlements rather than cities, they knew the local landscape and could easily set up traps using choke points, and they were resilient, only yielding to open battle on their own terms. The Romans themselves found out that they were out of their element in seeking decisive battles and sieges for a victory. A Roman army, fighting in phalanx style, by the way, was trapped in a mountain pass by the Samnites in 321 BCE and was only released after a humiliating ritual surrender. After this failure to secure a victory with decisive strikes, Rome realized it needed to wage total war, not just on the Samnite armies, but on the Samnite society. The phalanx, though lethal and unbeatable on flat ground, was badly suited to fight on uneven terrain, which disrupted and weakened the formation. The Romans changed their approach, adopting a more lightly armored and flexible sword and shield-based army organized in looser formations and smaller units. These units were better for fighting in all directions, could be broken up into smaller detachments, and could more easily respond to changes in the conditions of the battle. Through this approach and through decades of war, the Romans managed to subjugate the Samnites. They effectively tore Samnite society up by the roots to conclude the war. It was not fast, nor easy, nor did the phalanx get the job done for them. Unfortunately for the Macedonians, their upgraded phalanx would have the same weaknesses and shortcomings that the Roman phalanx did. One can easily imagine that bad Macedonian intelligence could get the entire army trapped in an ambush just like the Romans. The Samnites would never concede direct battle, nor would they settle for any peace that did not involve their total freedom and independence. They would fight on unconventional terms, using the hills and mountains to their advantage and refusing to give battle. But Alexander fought in the mountains, you say? Yes, he did, and he won battles in the mountains, specifically in the Zagros Mountains against the Persians. But they were the Persians. The greatest empire in all of history at that point, yes, but their authority quickly became fragile after a few decisive military victories. From that point, the agreements of power within the Persian Empire and the administrative structures all transferred to Alexander's authority. He effectively just became the new Shah of Persia. Alexander did no empire building himself, nor did he ever face significant resistance within the territories he conquered from Persia. They simply declared loyalty to the strongest, as he would say, once his battlefield victories made it clear he was the strongest. This was the conventional Near East way of war, and Alexander brought nothing new to the table in this regard. The Samnites and other Italian peoples did not fight on these terms. There was no cohesive political or economic structure binding all of Italy together the same way there was in Persia. Alexander would have to go city by city, tribe by tribe, people by people, conquering everything. It would certainly take a while. I think it's possible he would just find it too unprofitable and end up abandoning the campaign at the behest of his subordinates. If his soldiers couldn't handle it anymore after a decade of conquering the known world, would they accept a decade-long slog, at least, through the backwater of Italy? Alexander fought 4 battles and all of Persia was his. In this way, although his accomplishments were incredible, his job was a lot easier than it could have been if he had gone west instead. He would have had to fight 50 battles to make progress in Italy, and before then his army might just give up on him. Could Alexander have defeated the Romans in a field battle and even conquered Rome itself in 330 BCE? Yes. Could he have taken over all of Italy, and if he did, have held it for a significant period of time? Most likely not. So, what do you guys think? Could Alexander the Great have defeated Rome if he tried to conquer Rome and the Italian region? Just keep in mind all the other reasons why Alexander was successful in the East and why he could be successful in the West. We have a full-length video where we explain why Alexander the Great didn't invade Rome. Link will be in the description. Just imagine how the world would have been if Alexander turned his eyes west. But, that's a story for another time. As always, thank you for your support.